As Carol Wilson announces to the executive team that I'm stepping down as Chief Operating Officer due to my concerning health issues, I sit silently in my home office, watching the entire scene unfold on my laptop screen. No one in that boardroom knows I've been remotely recording every management meeting for the past 3 months. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. No one realizes that while my mother-in-law delivers her sympathetic speech about my unfortunate condition, I'm drafting an email that will expose years of manipulation and deceit. She thinks her position as Chief Strategy Officer and her 20-year history with Meridian Solutions makes her untouchable. She believes that her carefully manufactured rumors about my deteriorating health will finally push me out of the company that I helped transform from a struggling startup into an industry leader. What she doesn't know is that I've already spoken with CEO George Hampton privately yesterday. What she can't possibly imagine is that I've spent 6 months building an ironclad case documenting every attempt she's made to undermine me since I married her son. As she concludes her announcement with a concerned smile, my finger hovers over the send button. By tomorrow morning, everyone at Meridian Solutions will know exactly who Carol Wilson really is, and more importantly, they'll know that I'm not going anywhere. My morning routine hasn't changed despite everything Carol has set in motion. I still wake at 5:30 a.m., brew my favorite dark roast coffee, and review the day's priorities from my home office overlooking Lake Harriet. The Minneapolis skyline glitters in the distance as dawn breaks over the city. The only difference today is the weight in my chest, a mixture of determination and disbelief that it's come to this. "You're up early," Mark says, leaning against the doorframe of my office. My husband of 7 years looks exhausted, caught between his mother's schemes and my suffering. "Couldn't sleep?" I offer him a small smile, not mentioning that I've been awake since 3 a.m. finalizing my strategy. "Big day ahead," I say instead. Mark runs his hand through his disheveled hair. "Lisa, maybe Mom's right. Maybe you should take some time off." "The doctors did say?" "The doctors said I should manage my stress," I interrupt calmly. "They never suggested I had a condition that would prevent me from working." This is the core of Carol's manipulation, taking the minor anxiety diagnosis I received after my father's death and gradually transforming it through whispers and concerned glances into a debilitating condition that supposedly makes me unfit for leadership. "I know, but Mark," I say gently, "we've talked about this." He sighs, knowing we have indeed talked about it, extensively, during our late-night conversations when I finally revealed the full extent of his mother's campaign against me. The evidence I've accumulated, the recordings, the testimonies from employees who've come to me privately. "I still can't believe she would do this," he says for perhaps the 100th time. I don't respond. Mark's inability to fully accept his mother's nature has been part of the problem. The woman who raised him and the woman who has systematically tried to destroy my career are 2 different people in his mind. I understand that. It's why I've been so patient, why I've documented everything meticulously before taking action. My phone buzzes with a text from Diane Rodriguez, my ally and the company's director of product development. "Carol's email just went out. Company-wide announcement about your leave of absence starting next week. You ready?" I take a deep breath. Carol has just accelerated my timeline. "She sent the email," I tell Mark, and his face falls. "She didn't even wait for the board's approval." Mark checks his phone and finds the message. I watch his expression shift from disbelief to anger as he reads his mother's carefully worded announcement, detailing my supposed health struggles, and how, after much difficult deliberation, I've decided to step away from my role. According to Carol, she'll be temporarily assuming my responsibilities while the company conducts a search for a permanent replacement. "This is insane," Mark says, his voice tight. "She can't just—" "She already has," I reply, turning back to my laptop. And now it's my turn. As Mark leaves to get ready for work, I open the document I've been preparing for months. Not the emotional, reactive email Carol expects me to send, if she expects me to respond at all. Instead, it's a meticulously crafted message that I've reviewed with both Diane and my attorney. My phone rings. It's George Hampton, the CEO. "Lisa, I just saw Carol's email," he begins without preamble. "This is not what we discussed yesterday." "I know, George. I told her to hold off until we spoke with the board. I told her we needed to address the succession plan properly." "Carol has never been good at waiting when she wants something," I reply, keeping my voice neutral. There's a pause. Then George says, "The response I recommended yesterday, are you still planning to proceed?" "Yes. With one adjustment, it needs to go out immediately." I hear him sigh deeply. "You have my support, Lisa. You know that. But this is going to get messy." "It's already messy, George. I'm just bringing the mess into the light." After we hang up, I make one final review of my email. This isn't just about defending my position or my reputation. It's about exposing a pattern of behavior that has damaged Meridian Solutions and created a toxic environment for multiple employees over years. My finger hovers over the send button as I think back to how it all began, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with small, seemingly insignificant moments that I initially dismissed. 3 years ago, when I first joined Meridian Solutions as Director of Operations, Carol had welcomed me warmly. She had been part of the company since its founding, a trusted advisor to George and respected throughout the organization. When I started dating her son Mark after meeting him at a company charity event, she seemed delighted. The subtle undermining began shortly after our engagement, comments in meetings that slightly misrepresented my statements. Important emails where I was mysteriously left off the thread. Project timelines adjusted without my knowledge. After our wedding, the tactics escalated. Reports I had prepared would be presented to the board with critical data changed. Winks. Members would receive contradictory instructions, supposedly from me. My promotion to COO last year, which came after I led a successful company-wide digital transformation, seemed to be the final straw for Carol. That's when the health rumors began. A quiet word to HR about how I seemed under strain. Concerned comments about my episodes in meetings where I had simply disagreed with her strategy. The suggestion that perhaps my condition was affecting my judgment on key decisions. The final piece fell into place 2 months ago when Andrew Chen, Carol's executive assistant, came to me with copies of emails she had asked him to draft. Emails to board members expressing concerns about my health and its impact on the company's future. "I can't be part of this anymore," Andrew had told me, his hands shaking slightly as he handed me the printed emails. "What she's doing to you, it isn't right." That was when I realized I needed more than just defensive measures. I needed to bring the whole truth to light. I pressed send, my company-wide email with the subject line, "Addressing recent communications." About my role at Meridian begins its journey to every employee, board member, and key client of Meridian Solutions. I'm not stepping down. I'm stepping up. Within seconds, my phone begins to buzz with incoming messages. I ignore them for now, standing to look out over the lake. The morning sun has fully risen, casting long, clear shadows across the water. Mark appears in the doorway again, dressed for work, uncertainty written across his features. "I sent it," I tell him simply. He nods, his expression a complex mixture of emotions. "I'm going to the office." "I'll be there at 11, I reply. "For the all-hands meeting I've called." As he leaves, I turn back to my laptop, where responses to my email are already flooding in. I open the file containing the presentation I've prepared for today's meeting, a comprehensive overview of Carol's actions, supported by irrefutable evidence, followed by my proposal for structural changes that will strengthen the company and prevent such manipulation in the future. This isn't the end, it's barely the beginning. But for the first time in months, as I close my laptop and prepare to face what comes next, I feel the tightness in my chest begin to ease. The drive to Meridian's headquarters in downtown Minneapolis gives me time to center myself. I've prepared for this confrontation meticulously, but I'm not naive about the challenges ahead. Carol has spent years cultivating relationships and building her influence within the company. My email may have set the record straight, but winning hearts and minds will require more than just exposing the truth. When I pull into my reserved parking space, I notice Diane Rodriguez waiting by the entrance. Her presence is a deliberate show of support, and I feel a surge of gratitude for her loyalty. "Quite the morning you've created," she says as I approach, but her smile tells me she approves. Carol arrived about 20 minutes ago, went straight to George's office. The shouting was impressive. And George, holding firm, as promised. Diane falls into step beside me as we enter the building. "Your email has certainly stirred things up. People are talking. Many are relieved, actually." "Relieved? You're not the first person Carol has targeted, Lisa. Just the first with enough power and evidence to fight back. This confirms what I've suspected, that Carol's tactics with me were part of a larger pattern of controlling behavior that has affected multiple employees over the years." As we cross the lobby, several colleagues look up, conversations pausing momentarily. Some nod in my direction, others quickly avert their eyes. The division is already apparent. "Second thoughts?" Diane asks quietly as we step into the elevator. I shake my head. Not about sending the email, I'm just concerned about the company. This kind of disruption is never easy. "The disruption was already happening," Diane points out. "It was just happening in the shadows, where it could do more damage." The elevator opens directly into the executive floor, where Natalie Parker from HR is waiting, her expression carefully neutral. "Lisa, George has asked to see you before the all-hands," she says. "He's in the boardroom with Carol and legal." I nod, having expected this. "Thank you, Natalie. I'll head there now." "I've reviewed everything," Natalie adds in a lower voice. "From an HR perspective, the documentation you've provided is comprehensive. We should have been more alert to what was happening." This small acknowledgement means more than she likely realizes. I've always respected Natalie's professionalism, and having her tacit support strengthens my resolve. The boardroom door is closed when I arrive. I take a moment to straighten my blazer and check my reflection in the glass wall adjacent to the door. I look composed, professional, not at all like someone suffering from the debilitating health issues Carol has been describing to everyone. I knock once and enter without waiting for a response. Inside, George sits at the head of the table, his normally jovial face serious. To his right is Michael Baxter from legal, reviewing documents spread before him. And there is Carol, standing by the window, her back rigid with anger. She turns when I enter, and the look she gives me is venomous. "Lisa," George begins, his tone formal. "Thank you for coming in early." "Of course," I reply, taking a seat across from Michael. I deliberately choose not to look at Carol again, focusing instead on George. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I've asked Michael to join us to provide some clarity on the situation from a legal standpoint, George continues, given the nature of the claims in your email. "Claims?" Carol interjects, her voice sharp. "You mean her vicious, unfounded accusations? This is defamation, plain and simple." I remain silent, letting her reaction speak for itself. Michael clears his throat. "Actually, Ms. Wilson, defamation requires the statements to be false. From what I've reviewed so far, Ms. Thompson has provided substantial documentation supporting her assertions." This is absurd, Carol snaps. I've given 20 years to this company. Your reputation should reflect your actions, I say calmly, speaking for the first time since entering. Everything in that email is factual and documented. You've been planning this, Carol accuses, finally turning to face me fully. Collecting your so-called evidence, manipulating people's perceptions. That's enough, George interrupts. Carol, you sent out an unauthorized announcement claiming Lisa was stepping down due to health issues, after I explicitly told you we needed to discuss this matter further. You've put the company in a difficult position. I was acting in Meridian's best interests. Lisa's condition. I don't have a condition, Carol, I state firmly. I had some anxiety after my father died last year. My doctor recommended stress management techniques, which I've been following. At no point did any medical professional suggest I was unfit for my role. The board has concerns. The board, George cuts in, has questions that arose primarily from information you provided them, Carol. Information that now appears to have been misleading at best. Carol's face flushes with anger, but she falls silent, recognizing the shift in power. Dynamics. Michael taps the documents before him. Based on my preliminary review, there are several concerning incidents documented here that could potentially violate company policies regarding workplace conduct and possibly rise to the level of harassment. This is a witch hunt, Carol mutters. No, I correct her. This is accountability. George sighs heavily. The all-hands meeting is in 45 minutes. We need to present a unified message about how we're addressing this situation. I've prepared a presentation, I inform him, opening my laptop. It outlines both the issues and my proposed solutions moving forward. Solutions? Carol scoffs. You've just thrown the company into chaos with your accusations, and now you want to propose solutions? I turn to face her directly. My goal has never been to create chaos, Carol. It's been to address the harmful dynamics that you've introduced into this company. The solutions I'm proposing aren't about punishing you. They're about creating better governance and transparency for everyone at Meridian. For the briefest moment, uncertainty flickers across Carol's face. Perhaps for the first time, she's realizing that I'm not simply reacting emotionally as she expected. I've been thinking strategically, several steps ahead. I'd like to see this presentation, George says. As I pull up the slides, I catch a glimpse of Mark through the glass wall, standing in the hallway. Our eyes meet briefly before he turns away, walking toward his office. The pain of his divided loyalties is evident even from a distance, and I feel a momentary pang of regret for the position he's in. But I remind myself that this confrontation became necessary precisely because I've spent too long trying to avoid it for his sake. The next 30 minutes are spent reviewing my presentation with George and Michael. Carol remains largely silent, her initial fury giving way to a cold calculation as she realizes the extent of the documentation I've gathered. By the time we finish, George has agreed to my key proposals: an independent review of the executive, reporting structure, new protocols for major communications, and a third-party assessment of our company culture. What remains unspoken but understood is that Carol's position at Meridian has been fundamentally compromised. As we prepare to head to the main conference room for the all-hands meeting, Carol finally speaks again. This isn't over, she says, quietly, intended for my ears alone. I meet her gaze steadily. You're right, it's just beginning, but not in the way you think. The Evergreen Conference Center, Meridian's largest meeting space, is filled to capacity when we arrive. Employees from every department sit in tense anticipation, while others join remotely via the company's video conferencing system. Conversations hush as George, Carol, and I enter the room. I catch glimpses of various reactions: confusion, curiosity, concern, but also surprising amounts of support in the nods and small smiles directed my way. Diane has positioned herself in the front row, alongside Tanya Collins from my team. Mark sits near the back, his expression unreadable. George takes the podium first, his familiar presence bringing a measure of calm to the room. "Thank you all for joining on such short notice," he begins. "As you're aware, there have been communications this morning regarding our leadership team that require clarification." He continues with a brief diplomatic statement acknowledging both Carol's unauthorized announcement and my response. He emphasizes the company's commitment to transparency and announces the independent review process that we've just agreed upon. Then, surprisingly, he introduces me to speak next, not Carol. As I take my place at the podium, I'm struck by the weight of the moment. This room contains people whose careers and livelihoods are connected to Meridian's success. They deserve more than just the exposure of internal politics. They deserve a path forward. "Good morning," I begin, my voice steady. I want to start by addressing the most immediate concern. I am not stepping down from my position as COO. My health is not an issue that impacts my ability to fulfill my responsibilities to this company and to all of you. I pause, letting this sink in before continuing. Many of you received two very different emails this morning. One painted a picture of me as someone struggling with serious health issues, necessitating my departure. The other, the one I sent, outlined a pattern of behavior that has been damaging not just to me personally, but to our organization as a whole. I deliberately avoid looking at Carol as I continue. I didn't make the decision to send that email lightly. I understand that exposing internal conflicts is uncomfortable and concerning for everyone. But I believe that Meridian Solutions has always been at its best when we approach challenges honestly and directly. For the next 15 minutes, I present a carefully curated version of my earlier presentation. I provide enough specific examples to validate my claims without turning the meeting into a personal attack on Carol. I focus on the systemic issues her actions have revealed, the lack of checks and balances in our leadership structure, the absence of clear protocols for major communications, the culture that allowed her behavior to continue unchallenged for so long. Throughout my presentation, Carol sits rigidly in her chair, her expression locked in a neutral mask. Occasionally, I notice her glancing at board members or key allies in the audience, attempting to gauge their reactions. In closing, I say, I want to emphasize that this situation, while difficult, presents an opportunity for Meridian to become stronger. The changes we implement now can ensure that our company culture truly reflects our stated values of integrity, transparency, and respect. As I step away from the podium, the room remains silent for a beat before scattered applause begins, gradually building. It's not thunderous approval, but it's significantly more positive than I had dared to hope. 4. George returns to wrap up the meeting, announcing that department heads will follow up with their teams throughout the day. As people begin to file out, I notice several employees approaching Diane and Tanya, engaging in animated conversations. "Well delivered," Michael from legal comments quietly as he passes me. "Measured and solution-focused." I'm about to respond when I notice Mark making his way toward me. His expression is conflicted, but he reaches for my hand when he arrives at my side. "That couldn't have been easy," he says. Before I can respond, Carol approaches, her composure tightly controlled now that we're in public. "I'd like a word with my son," she says, pointedly ignoring me. Mark's hand tightens around mine. "Anything you want to say to me can be said with Lisa present." A flash of something, hurt perhaps, or simply frustration, crosses Carol's face before her mask returns. "Fine. I'm heading home to consider my options. I assume you'll be joining me for dinner to discuss this situation." "Actually," Mark replies, his voice gaining strength, "Lisa and I have plans tonight." Carol's eyes narrow slightly. "I see. Well, when you're ready to discuss how your wife has systematically destroyed your mother's career, you know where to find me." As she walks away, Mark sighs heavily. I'm sorry for all of this. You have nothing to apologize for, I tell him, meaning it. She made her choices. I know, I never wanted to believe she could be like this. George approaches. Before I can respond, his expression serious but relieved. Lisa, I've scheduled an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. I'd like you to join. Of course. Mark, George acknowledges with a nod before turning back to me. For what it's worth, I think you struck exactly the right tone in there. This won't be easy, but I believe the company will ultimately be stronger for it. As George walks away, I realize that Natalie from HR is waiting to speak with me, a folder, tucked under her arm. Beyond her, I can see a line of people who seem to want a moment of my time, some offering support, others likely having questions or concerns. It's going to be a long day, I murmur to Mark. He squeezes my hand once more, before releasing it. You've got this. I'll see you at home tonight. As he leaves, I straighten my shoulders and turn to Natalie, ready to face whatever comes next. The hardest part, breaking my silence and standing up to Carol's manipulation, is over. Now comes the work of rebuilding and reforming Meridian into the company it has the potential to be. What I don't yet realize is how many others have been waiting for someone to finally challenge Carol's authority. By the end of the day, my inbox will be filled with messages from employees at all levels sharing their own experiences. The company-wide email I sent didn't just save my career, it opened the door to a complete transformation of Meridian Solutions. In the weeks and months that follow, that transformation will sometimes be messy and uncomfortable. Carol will eventually resign rather than accept the diminished role offered to her. Mark will struggle with his mother's sense of betrayal, though he never wavers in his support of me. The independent review will uncover more issues than even I had documented, leading to significant changes in our leadership structure and company policies. But standing here now, in the aftermath of that pivotal all-hands meeting, I already feel a shift in the atmosphere. People are speaking more freely, standing taller. Something that was tightly wound has begun to unravel, making space for something healthier to grow. I take a deep breath and motion for Natalie to join me in my office. One conversation at a time, we'll rebuild this company on a foundation of truth and respect, rather than fear and manipulation. And I'll do it all without sacrificing my integrity, or my health, regardless of what rumors might have claimed. The next morning, I arrive at the office earlier than usual. It's barely 7:00 a.m., but I need time to prepare before the inevitable storm hits. The building is quiet, most of the lights still off, giving me a rare moment of peace to organize my thoughts. I've spent the night reviewing every document, every recording, every piece of evidence I've collected over the past 6 months. Everything is now stored in 3 separate locations: my secure cloud drive, an encrypted hard drive in my home safe, and copies with my attorney. Carol might be a master manipulator, but I've learned to be thorough. The soft ping of the elevator announces another early arrival. I tense slightly until Diane Rodriguez appears at my office door, 2 coffee cups in hand. "Thought you might need reinforcements," she says, placing 1 cup on my desk. The rich aroma of dark roast with a hint of cinnamon, my favorite from North Star Cafe, fills the room. "You're a lifesaver," I say gratefully, taking a sip. "How bad is it out there?" Diane settles into the chair across from me. Social media is relatively quiet, but internal messaging channels were buzzing. Until late last night. Your email caused quite the stir. Good stir or bad stir? Mixed, she admits. Carol has her loyalists. But there's also a surprising amount of support for you. People coming forward with their own stories about her tactics. I nod, having anticipated this divided response. And Mark? Have you heard anything? Diane's expression softens. He called me last night, actually. Wanted to know if there was anything he could do to help. He's caught in an impossible position, Lisa. I know, I say quietly. I've been careful to keep Mark separated from this conflict as much as possible, aware of how painful it is for him to see the discord between his mother and his wife. But Carol's latest move left me no choice but to act decisively. My phone buzzes with a message from Natalie in HR. Carol just arrived, went straight to her office, looks determined. Security has been briefed to monitor the situation discreetly. She's here, I tell Diane, showing her the message. Diane raises an eyebrow. Earlier than I expected. Want me to run interference? No need, I reply, straightening the papers on my desk. Let's see what move she makes next. I don't have to wait long. Less than 20 minutes later, my phone lights up with notifications. Multiple employees are messaging me about an email Carol has just sent to the entire executive team and board of directors, but notably, not to me. Andrew Chen, Carol's assistant who had previously helped me by sharing her drafted emails, forwards me the message with a simple note. Thought you should see this. I'm sorry. Carol's email is masterfully crafted. I have to give her that. In it, she expresses deep concern about my troubling behavior and increasingly erratic decision-making. She references confidential medical information that she cannot share out of respect for my privacy, but which supposedly validates her fears about my fitness for leadership. She calls my company-wide email sadly indicative of the very issues we've been privately addressing and urges the leadership team to take immediate action to protect both Lisa and Meridian Solutions during this difficult time. It's a perfect example of weaponized compassion, appearing to care while simultaneously undermining me. She's good, Diane mutters, reading over my shoulder. Makes herself sound like she's only looking out for your well-being. She's had years of practice, I reply, feeling oddly calm. This response is exactly what I predicted. Notice how she's careful not to make any specific claims about my health that could be disproven. It's all vague concern and innuendo. My phone rings. It's George. I just saw Carol's email, he says when I answer. Are you all right? I'm fine, George. This is exactly what I expected her to do. She's requested an emergency meeting with the board at 10 a.m. Says she has documentation to share regarding your situation. I keep my voice steady. What documentation could she possibly have? My medical records are private, and there's nothing in them that would support her claims anyway. I don't know, George admits. But some board members are concerned. Henderson and Watkins in particular. James Henderson and Elaine Watkins, two of the oldest board members and longtime allies of Carol. No surprise there. I want to attend this meeting, I state firmly. That's why I'm calling. I think you should be there. In fact, I think you should present first. This catches me by surprise. Present what? Everything, Lisa. All the evidence you've gathered. The recordings, the emails, the timeline. The board needs to see the full picture before Carol spins. Her narrative. I consider this for a moment. I had planned to release my evidence gradually, in measured responses to Carol's moves. But perhaps a preemptive strike makes more sense now. I'll be ready, I promise. After hanging up, I turn to Diane. I need your help preparing a comprehensive presentation for the board. We have less than 3 hours. She's already pulling out her laptop. I'll call Tanya and Andrew too. Between the 4 of us, we can organize everything. By 9:30 a.m., our team has assembled in a small conference room away from the main office areas. The presentation we've created is devastating in its thoroughness, a meticulous chronicle of Carol's systematic campaign against me, supported by timestamps, screenshots, recordings, and testimonials from colleagues who've agreed to come forward. Tanya, who's been with me since I joined Meridian, looks up from her laptop with concern. This is going to cause an earthquake in the company. Are you sure you're ready for the aftershocks? No, I admit. But I'm less ready to let Carol continue destroying what we've all worked so hard to build. Andrew, who looks both nervous and determined, adds, Ms. Wilson, Carol, she doesn't respond well to being challenged. This will make her… dangerous, Diane finishes for him. More dangerous than she already is. I nod, appreciating their concern. That's why this needs to be irrefutable. Not emotional, not retaliatory. Just facts, presented clearly. At 9:50 a.m., we make our way to the boardroom. Carol is already there, engaged in quiet conversation with Henderson and Watkins. She falters momentarily when she sees me enter with my team, clearly not having expected my presence. Her recovery is swift, her smile tight as she nods in my direction. Lisa, I didn't think you'd be joining us given your condition. My condition is excellent, Carol. Thank you for your concern, I reply pleasantly, taking a seat directly across from her. I wouldn't miss this meeting for the world. George arrives last, his expression grave as he takes his position at the head of the table. The rest of the board members file in, along with Michael from legal and Natalie from HR. The tension in the room is palpable. Before we begin, George announces, I want to clarify that this is not a trial or a formal hearing. This is an informational meeting to address serious concerns that have been raised about our executive leadership dynamics. We will hear presentations from both Carol Wilson and Lisa Thompson, after which the board will deliberate on appropriate next steps. Carol shifts slightly, clearly not having anticipated a structured format with equal time for both of us. She had likely expected to control the narrative from the outset. Given the nature of Lisa's email yesterday, George continues, I believe it's appropriate for her to present first, to provide context for the situation we find ourselves in. Carol starts to object, but Henderson places a restraining hand on her arm, murmuring something that causes her to reluctantly sit back. I stand and connect my laptop to the presentation system. As the first slide appears, a simple timeline, titled Systematic Undermining of Leadership at Meridian Solutions. I feel a strange sense of calm. After months of documentation, careful planning, and strategic patience, the moment of truth has arrived. Thank you for convening this meeting, I begin. What I'm about to present may be difficult for some of you to hear, but it's essential information for the future of our company. For the next 40 minutes, I methodically walk the board through my evidence. I begin with what appeared to be isolated incidents. Emails where I was excluded from crucial communications, meeting notes that subtly misrepresented my positions, project parameters changed without consultation. I demonstrate how these seemingly unconnected events formed a pattern of obstruction that consistently undermined my leadership. Then I move to the health rumors, showing the progression from Carol's initial expressions of concern about my stress levels following my father's death, to her increasingly alarming statements to colleagues and board members about my supposed mental and physical deterioration. This is the actual medical report from my physician, I say, displaying a document on screen with certain sections highlighted. As you can see, it recommends standard stress management techniques following a period of grief, meditation, regular exercise, and adequate sleep. There is no diagnosis of any condition that would impair my professional judgment or capacity to lead. I proceed to the most damning evidence, recordings of Carol discussing strategies to have me removed from my position. In one particularly revealing clip, she can be heard telling Henderson, "Once we get her out, we can restructure the entire operations division. Return to the way things were before she started all these disruptive innovations." Throughout my presentation, Carol's expression darkens, her posture becoming increasingly rigid. When I play a recording of her instructing Andrew to find something, anything in her medical history we can use, several board members visibly recoil. Finally, I present statements from employees who have experienced similar undermining, tactics from Carol over the years, including 3 executives who eventually left the company because of her interference. This isn't just about me, I conclude. This is about a pattern of behavior that has harmed Meridian Solutions for years. Talented people have left. Innovative ideas have been suppressed. A culture of fear and political maneuvering has been allowed to flourish at the expense of our mission and values. I pause, looking directly at each board member in turn. I'm not asking you to choose between Carol and me. I'm asking you to choose the kind of company Meridian Solutions will be moving forward. One where leadership is earned through manipulation and intimidation, or one where it's earned through innovation, collaboration, and respect. As I return to my seat, the room is silent. Several board members are reviewing the printed materials I've provided, expressions grave. George, who has seen most of this evidence already, simply nods once in acknowledgement of the thoroughness of my presentation. Carol stands slowly, her composure remarkable given what she's just witnessed. "Well," she begins, her voice steady, "that was certainly comprehensive. I won't deny that Lisa has assembled an impressive collection of materials." She pauses, offering a small, sad smile to the room. "What troubles me is not the evidence itself, but what it represents about Lisa's state of mind." She clicks to her first slide, a photograph of me from the company retreat 6 months ago, looking tired after a long day of strategic planning sessions. "This is a person under extreme stress," Carol continues. "Someone who has been working herself to the point of exhaustion. Someone who has, understandably, become paranoid and suspicious as her health has deteriorated." She moves through her own presentation, much shorter than mine, but emotionally compelling. She portrays herself as a concerned mentor who watched me struggle and tried to help. She reframes her questionable actions as attempts to protect both me and the company during what she describes as my increasingly troubled period. The very fact that Lisa has been secretly recording conversations, compiling dossiers on colleagues, and constructing elaborate conspiracy theories should tell you everything you need to know about her current state, Carol argues. This is not the behavior of a healthy executive. This is someone in crisis. She turns to me, her expression a perfect mixture of compassion and concern. "Lisa, I care about you deeply, not just as my daughter-in-law, but as a talented leader who has so much to offer when she's well. This crusade you've embarked on, it's not healthy. It's not who you really are. It's masterfully done. If I hadn't spent months documenting her manipulation, I might almost believe her myself." When Carol finishes, George opens the floor for questions. The discussion is tense but measured, with board members probing both of our presentations. Henderson and Watkins predictably support Carol's narrative, while others seem genuinely torn about what to believe. Then, Elaine Watkins asks the question, "I've been waiting for, Lisa, if things were as bad as you claim, why wait so long to bring this to our attention? Why compile all this evidence secretly instead of addressing the issues as they arose?" Before I can answer, the boardroom door opens, and Mark walks in. His appearance causes a ripple of surprise. He rarely attends board meetings despite technically being a minor shareholder through family connections. "I apologize for interrupting," he says, his voice steady though I can see the tension in his shoulders. "But I believe I can provide some context to Ms. Watkins's question." Carol starts to rise. "Mark, this isn't the appropriate—" "Please, Mom," he says quietly, and something in his tone causes her to settle back into her seat. Mark moves to stand beside me, not touching me, but clearly positioning himself as my ally. "Lisa didn't bring these concerns forward earlier for 2 reasons, he begins. First, because she was gathering evidence to ensure she wouldn't be dismissed as emotional or irrational, labels that have been all too readily applied to women in leadership when they raise uncomfortable truths. Several board members shift uncomfortably at this observation. Second, Mark continues, his voice softening slightly, she waited because of me. Because she knew how painful it would be for me to see the truth about my mother's behavior. Carol's face pales. Mark, you can't possibly believe? I've seen the evidence, Mom, he interrupts gently. All of it. I've heard the recordings. I've read the emails. But more than that, I've witnessed how you've treated Lisa from the beginning. The subtle digs, the backhanded compliments, the way you undermine her at family gatherings just as systematically as you do in the office. He turns to address the board directly. I love my mother, and I always will. But what she's done here isn't just wrong. It's destructive to this company and everyone who works in it, including herself. The room falls silent as the impact of Mark's words settles over everyone. Carol looks genuinely shocked, perhaps for the first time in this entire process. She had clearly counted on Mark's loyalty, or at least his neutrality. I think, George says finally, breaking the tension, that the board needs time to deliberate privately. Lisa, Carol, if you would give us the room, please. As we file out, Carol attempts to speak to Mark, but he shakes his head slightly, indicating now is not the time. In the hallway, she turns to me, her composure cracking for the first time. You've turned my own son against me, she hisses, voice low enough that only I can hear. Was that your plan all along? To isolate me? Completely? You did this, Carol, I reply quietly. Not me. I simply stopped hiding the truth. This isn't over, she warns before stalking away toward her office. Mark and I find a quiet corner of the executive lounge to wait. For several minutes, neither of us speaks. Then he reaches for my hand, his grip tight. I didn't know you were going to do that, I say finally. Neither did I, until I heard Mom's email had gone out this morning. He runs his free hand through his hair, a gesture of stress I've come to know well. I couldn't let her keep twisting. Everything. Making you look like the unstable one. Not when I've seen the toll all this has taken on you. I lean against his shoulder, suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline of the confrontation begins to fade. Whatever happens in there, thank you for standing up for the truth. I know how hard that was. He nods, unable to fully articulate his feelings. We sit in silence until Natalie appears, informing us that the board is ready for us to return. Back in the boardroom, the atmosphere has shifted. The board members look somber but resolved. Carol is already seated, her expression carefully neutral once more. George clears his throat. After reviewing all the evidence and testimony presented, today, the board has reached several preliminary decisions, subject to legal review and formal ratification. He looks at Carol. Carol, in light of the documented pattern of behavior that runs counter to our company values and policies, we are placing you on administrative leave, effective immediately, pending a full investigation by an independent third party. Carol's hands clench on the table, but she remains silent. Lisa, George continues, turning to me, the board recognizes that you have been operating under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. We acknowledge that your actions in documenting these issues were taken in the best interest of the company, though we would have preferred earlier notification through official channels. I nod, accepting this gentle rebuke. They're not wrong. In an ideal world, I would have come forward sooner. But the reality of power dynamics in the workplace is rarely ideal, especially for women facing established figures like Carol. Moving forward, George announces, the board has approved the formation of an ethics and governance committee to review our leadership structures and communication protocols. We will also be engaging an organizational development consultant to assess our company culture and recommend improvements. He pauses, looking between Carol and me. This situation has revealed significant flaws in how we operate as an executive team. That stops today. As the meeting concludes, I feel a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that the truth is finally out, sadness for the pain this has caused Mark, concern about the disruption to the company, and determination to help. Meridian heal and grow stronger from this experience. Outside the boardroom, employees are trying to appear busy while obviously watching for clues about what transpired. News travels fast in corporate environments, and everyone knows something momentous has occurred. Diane approaches, her expression questioning. Well, Carol's on administrative leave, I say quietly. There will be an independent investigation. She exhales slowly. And you? Still co-o, with a mandate to help fix the culture that allowed this to happen in the first place. As we walk back toward my office, I see Andrew clearing items from his desk, looking uncertain about his future now that Carol has been suspended. Andrew? I call, detouring toward him. Do you have a moment? He looks up nervously. Ms. Thompson, I understand if you want me reassigned, given my position, with Ms. Wilson. Actually, I interrupt gently, I wanted to thank you for your courage in coming forward. That couldn't have been easy. He blinks in surprise. It wasn't, but it was the right thing to do. I agree, and that's exactly the kind of integrity we need more of around here. I pause, considering something I hadn't planned. How would you feel about joining the new Ethics and Governance Committee as a staff representative? We need perspectives from all levels of the organization. The transformation in his expression, from fear to cautious hope, reinforces my belief that Meridian can become something better than it has been. I'd be honored, he says. By late afternoon, the official announcement of Carol's administrative leave has been distributed company-wide, along with a carefully worded statement about Meridian's commitment to a healthy workplace culture. George has handled the communications masterfully, neither vilifying Carol nor dismissing the seriousness of what has occurred. In my office, I'm reviewing preliminary proposals from organizational consultants when Mark appears in the doorway. He looks exhausted but somehow lighter, as if a burden has been set down. Mom's gone home, he says, entering and closing the door behind him. She's not in a good place. I set aside my work. I'm sorry, Mark, truly. He shakes his head. Don't be. This needed to happen. He sighs heavily. It's hard to reconcile the mother I thought I knew with the person in those recordings. I stand and move around my desk to embrace him. People are complicated. She can be both. The mother who loves you and the executive who did these things. One doesn't erase the other. He holds me tightly for a moment before pulling back to look at me. How are you so calm about all this? After everything she did? I consider this question carefully. Because this was never about punishing Carol. It was about protecting myself and Meridian. Now that that's happening, I don't need to carry all that anger anymore. Later that evening, as we drive home along the shore of Lake Harriet, the setting sun casts long shadows across the water. Mark is quiet, processing the day's events while I find myself mentally mapping out the work ahead, the cultural assessment, the policy reviews, the healing conversations that will need to happen throughout the organization. It's not going to be easy, Mark says suddenly, as if reading my thoughts. Rebuilding after all this. No, I agree, watching the golden light play across the lake's surface. But necessary things rarely are. As we pull into our driveway, I notice a familiar car parked on the street. Diana Bennett, Carol's mother and Mark's grandmother. She's been largely uninvolved in company matters since her retirement 10 years ago, but she still holds significant shares and moral authority within the family. Mark tenses beside me. I should have expected this. Diana emerges from her car as we park, her elegant figure belying her 75 years. Her expression is unreadable as we approach. Mark, Lisa. Her voice is cool but not hostile. I think it's time we had a family conversation, don't you? Inside, seated in our living room with untouched cups of tea before us, Diana gets straight to the point. Carol called me in quite a state, she begins. Her version of events was colorful. I'd like to hear yours. Mark starts to speak, but Diana holds up a hand. Actually, I'd like to hear from Lisa first. I meet her steady gaze, recognizing that this moment may be as important for the future of our family as today's board meeting was for Meridian. Carefully, respectfully, I lay out what happened. Not just the recent events, but the pattern of behavior that led to them. I show her some of the key evidence, including emails where Carol explicitly discussed using my father's death as an opportunity to question my stability. Throughout my explanation, Diana's expression remains impassive, though I notice her hands tightening occasionally around her teacup. When I finish, she turns to Mark. And you support this assessment? I do, he says simply. I've seen the evidence. More importantly, I've witnessed Mom's behavior myself over the years. I just didn't want to acknowledge what it meant. Diana nods slowly, then sits back in her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 75 years. The Wilson women have always been formidable in business, she says after a long moment. My mother-in-law, myself, Carol, we fought our way into boardrooms that didn't want us there. We developed tactics for survival. She looks at me directly. But somewhere along the way, Carol forgot the difference between tactics and character, between protecting herself and destroying others. Diana sighs deeply. I failed her in that lesson, I think. What happens now? Mark asks quietly. Diana straightens, some of her usual authority returning. Now I have a conversation with my daughter about consequences and choices, and you two focus on healing, both yourselves and that company. Before she leaves, Diana surprises me by taking my hands in hers. You were smart, methodical, and measured in your response to a genuine threat, she says. Carol may not recognize it yet, but you've demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership Meridian needs. After she's gone, Mark and I sit in silence for a while, processing this unexpected validation. Did that just happen? He finally asks. Did Grandma Diana basically take your side against Mom? I don't think she's taking sides, I reply, thoughtfully. I think she's standing up for principles that transcend family loyalty. That night, as Mark sleeps beside me, I stare at the ceiling, replaying the events of the past 2 days. The company-wide email that started it all seems like it happened weeks ago rather than yesterday morning. So much has changed so quickly. My phone lights up with a text message from George. Just had a call from Henderson. He's resigning from the board, effective immediately. Says it's for personal reasons, but we both know it's because of what came out today about his collaboration with Carol. This is just the beginning of the changes, isn't it? I type back, yes, but necessary ones. Setting my phone aside, I finally close my eyes, feeling the first real sense of peace I've had in months. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, difficult conversations, and hard work to rebuild what was broken. But for tonight, at least, the truth is out, and that's enough. The morning light filters through the blinds of my office as I review the draft of Meridian's new ethical governance framework. It's been 3 weeks since the board meeting that changed everything, and the company is still finding its equilibrium. I take a sip of my coffee, noting the relative quiet of the executive floor. Carol's office across the hall remains empty. The nameplate removed last Friday after the independent investigation confirmed every allegation I'd brought forward, and uncovered several more I hadn't known about. My phone chimes with a message from Natalie in HR. The organizational assessment report just arrived. Want to review together at 10? I respond with a quick affirmative, then turn back to my computer. My inbox is overflowing as usual, but it's different now, filled with project updates, collaboration requests, and ideas from employees who previously remained silent. Without Carol's shadow looming over everything, people are finding their voices. A soft knock at my door interrupts my thoughts. Andrew stands there, holding a folder and looking considerably more confident than he did 3 weeks ago. The ethics. Committee finished reviewing the communication protocols, he says, entering when I wave him in. We have some recommendations we think will prevent the kind of information manipulation that happened before. I accept the folder with a smile. That was fast. I'm impressed. Andrew takes a seat across from me. People are motivated. There's this feeling throughout the company that we have a real opportunity to fix things that have been broken for a long time. And how are you doing? I ask. It can't be easy transitioning from Carol's assistant to this new role. He considers this for a moment. Actually, it's been liberating. I spent 3 years managing her schedule, crafting her emails, watching her undermine people, including you, and feeling powerless to do anything about it. He straightens slightly. Now I'm helping build safeguards to make sure it never happens again. It feels right. After Andrew leaves, I walk to the window, looking out at the Minneapolis skyline. 3 weeks ago, I couldn't imagine being here. Like this, still in my position, implementing positive changes, watching the company culture begin to heal. I expected either to be forced out by Carol's machinations or to win my position back, but face ongoing resistance and resentment. Instead, something unexpected happened. Transparency created space for transformation. Once the truth was out, people throughout Meridian seemed ready, eager even, to embrace a different way of working together. My phone buzzes again. Mark, checking in as he does every morning. Meeting with Grandma Diana went well. She's fully on board with the restructuring. Plan dinner tonight? I smile at his message. Mark has been remarkable throughout this transition, balancing his personal hurt over his mother's actions with his commitment to Meridian's future. His relationship with Carol remains strained. They've spoken only twice since the board meeting, both conversations ending badly. But he's found unexpected support from Diana, who has emerged as one of our strongest allies in reshaping the company's governance. At 10:00 a.m., Natalie arrives with the Organizational Assessment Report, a comprehensive evaluation conducted by an external consulting firm. We spend the next hour reviewing its findings, which confirm much of what we already suspected. Years of Carol's leadership had created departments that operated in silos, information that was weaponized rather than shared, and talented employees who felt unable to contribute their best ideas for fear of political backlash. The good news, Natalie points out, highlighting a section toward the end, is that the changes of the past few weeks have already started shifting these patterns. The consultants were apparently surprised by how quickly people have responded to the new transparency initiatives. People have been waiting for this, I observe. They just needed to see that it was safe to think differently. Natalie nods, then hesitates before adding, "There is one thing you should know. Some of Carol's closest allies are still struggling with the transition. James Peterson in finance and Valerie Moore in marketing in particular have been resistant to the new collaborative approaches." That's to be expected, I acknowledge. They were part of Carol's inner circle for years. This represents a significant loss of influence for them. "Do you want me to keep an eye on them?" Natalie asks. I consider this question carefully. The easy answer would be yes, to monitor potential resistance and neutralize it. That's what Carol would have done. But I'm determined to lead differently. No, I decide. Let's invite them directly into the process instead. Schedule a meeting. For me, with both of them. Let's hear their concerns firsthand and see if we can find common ground. Natalie looks surprised but approves. That's not how things would have been handled before. Exactly, I reply with a smile. That's the point. After Natalie leaves, I receive a call from George, who's been in New York meeting with our largest clients, explaining the leadership changes and assuring them of Meridian's stability. "How are things on the client front?" I ask once we've exchanged greetings. "Better than expected," he replies. Once I explained the measures we're implementing to improve governance and transparency, most were quite supportive. A few even commented that they'd had their own concerns about working with Carol in the past but hadn't known how to address them. "Any pushback?" George pauses. "Randall and Hayes is wavering. They had a close relationship with Carol, apparently. She had some sort of personal connection with their CEO. Thomas Hayes was her college boyfriend," I inform him. "They've remained friendly over the years. Carol leveraged that relationship frequently." "Ah," George says, understanding dawning in his voice. "That explains why they're the only ones expressing serious reservations." Hayes asked specifically about the possibility of her return. "And what did you tell him?" "The truth, that the independent investigation confirmed systemic issues that made her continued leadership untenable. I emphasized that we value their business and would be happy to have you join our next meeting with them to discuss the path forward." I agree to this approach, making a note to prepare for what will certainly be a challenging conversation. Thomas Hayes was not just Carol's ex-boyfriend. He was someone she had cultivated as an ally for years. Winning his confidence without her influence will require careful navigation. The rest of the morning passes in a blur of meetings and decisions. At 1 p.m., I join the product development team for a review of our new healthcare management platform, a project that had been repeatedly delayed under Carol's leadership due to what she called strategic recalibrations, but which were actually attempts to redirect resources to initiatives that would enhance her personal visibility. Diane Rodriguez, who leads the team, can barely contain her excitement as she demos the platform's latest features. We've implemented all the functionality the clients requested originally, plus these additional modules that address emerging regulatory requirements. She glances at me. "We could be ready for beta testing in 2 weeks, if we get approval to proceed without further review." In the past, such approval would have been practically impossible to secure. Carol had inserted herself into every significant product decision, often creating bottlenecks that frustrated teams and delayed launches. It was one of her most effective methods of control, ensuring that nothing important happened without her involvement. "You have my approval," I say simply. "If you're confident in the product's readiness, let's move forward." The surprise and subsequent joy that spreads across the faces of the development team is both gratifying and saddening, a stark reminder of how accustomed they'd become to unnecessary obstacles. After the product review, I head to the small conference room where my meeting with James Peterson and Valerie Moore is scheduled. As Carol's longtime allies, they represent the most significant internal resistance to the changes we're implementing. How this conversation goes will likely determine whether they can become part of Meridian's future or will remain entrenched in its past. They're already seated when I arrive, their body language tense and defensive. James, Meridian's financial controller and Carol's right-hand man for over a decade, barely meets my eyes as I enter. Valerie, our marketing director who owes her rapid rise through the ranks to Carol's patronage, watches me with undisguised suspicion. "Thank you both for making time for this," I begin, taking a seat across from them. "I wanted us to talk directly, rather than allowing assumptions and misunderstandings to grow." "What assumptions would those be?" James asks, his tone carefully neutral, but with an underlying edge. "For starters, that because you were allied with Carol, you're automatically my adversaries," I reply straightforwardly. "Or that the changes happening at Meridian are designed to diminish your roles or contributions." Valerie shifts slightly. "You have to admit, it looks that way. Carol's gone, her supporters are being sidelined, and suddenly everything about how we've operated for years is being questioned." I nod, acknowledging her perception. "I understand why it feels targeted. But this isn't about retribution or consolidating power. It's about creating a healthier organization where everyone can do their best work, including both of you. With all due respect, James interjects, you've completely upended the leadership structure that made Meridian successful. Carol built this company's reputation. Carol nearly destroyed this company's future. I correct him gently but firmly. The assessment report confirms what many of us have known for years, that her leadership style created silos, suppressed innovation, and ultimately held us back from our full potential. Both look skeptical, so I change approach. Let me ask you something. James, how many of your financial recommendations over the past 2 years were implemented without significant modification by Carol? He blinks, clearly not expecting this. Question. Not many, I suppose. And Valerie, how often did Carol override your marketing strategies in favor of approaches that centered her as the face of Meridian, regardless of what the market data suggested? Valerie's shoulders tense, but she doesn't deny it. She had strong opinions about brand positioning. She had strong opinions about everything, I acknowledge. And while that confidence helped build Meridian initially, it eventually became an obstacle to our growth. You both know this is true, even if loyalty has prevented you from saying it aloud. A heavy silence falls over the room as they absorb my words. Finally, James speaks, his voice quieter than before. What do you want? From us, Lisa, why are we really here? Because you're both incredibly valuable to Meridian, I respond honestly. James, your financial acumen is unmatched. Valerie, your creative approach to marketing has won us recognition throughout the industry. I don't want to lose your talents because of politics or perceived allegiances. I lean forward slightly. I'm not asking you to repudiate Carol or pretend the past didn't happen. I'm inviting you to be part of shaping Meridian's future, a future where your expertise is truly valued and your input isn't filtered through someone else's agenda. Valerie studies me for a long moment. And if we're not interested in this invitation, then that's your choice, and I'll respect it, I reply. But before you decide, I'd ask that you review the new departmental structure being proposed, where both finance and marketing would have greater autonomy and direct input into strategic planning. I slide folders across the table to each of them. Just consider the possibilities. As they leave, neither has committed to anything, but I notice a shift in their demeanor, a thoughtfulness that wasn't there before. It's a small opening, but sometimes that's all you need to begin changing entrenched perspectives. My afternoon concludes with a video call with Thomas Hayes, CEO of Randall & Hayes and Carol's longtime friend. George joins me for this conversation, which proves every bit as challenging as anticipated. I've known Carol Wilson for 30 years, Hayes begins without preamble. She's one of the most capable executives I've ever worked with. These allegations against her seem convenient for certain parties. His gaze through the screen makes it clear who he believes those certain parties to be. Rather than becoming defensive, I respond calmly. I understand your loyalty to Carol, Mr. Hayes. Personal relationships in business are important. But so is accountability. Accountability for what exactly? He challenges. Trying to protect her company from instability? Being concerned about leadership continuity when a key executive shows signs of health issues. Mr. Hayes, I reply, I appreciate that Carol has presented her version of events to you. That's her prerogative. But the independent investigation conducted by Marshall and Reed, a firm, I should note, with an impeccable reputation for objectivity, confirmed systematic attempts to undermine not just me, but multiple executives over a period of years through manipulation of information and abuse of authority. I pause to let this sink in before continuing. I'd be happy to share the full report with you, subject to appropriate confidentiality agreements. I believe in transparency, even when it's uncomfortable. Hayes seems taken aback by this offer, clearly not having expected such directness. That won't be necessary. I'm more concerned about how these changes will affect the services Meridian provides to my company. From there, the conversation shifts to more practical matters. Our commitment to their projects, the improved product development timeline now that artificial bottlenecks have been removed, and the enhanced support structure we're implementing for key clients. By the call's end, Hayes has not explicitly withdrawn his concerns, but his tone has moderated considerably. "Keep us updated on these changes," he says finally. "We'll be watching how things develop." After the call, George gives me an impressed nod. "You handled that perfectly." Offering to show him the investigation report was a masterstroke, called his bluff without being confrontational. "Transparency works both ways," I reply. "If we're building a company on clearer communication and accountability, we need to model that in all our interactions." As the workday winds down, I receive an unexpected visit from Diana Wilson. Carol's mother rarely comes to the Meridian offices since her retirement, making her appearance particularly noteworthy. "Do you have a moment?" she asks from my doorway, elegant as always in a tailored suit that belies her 75 years. "Of course," I reply, gesturing to the chairs by the small conference table rather than maintaining the formality of my desk. Diana settles across from me, her posture perfect, her expression thoughtful. "I've been reviewing the proposals for restructuring Meridian's board governance," she begins. "They're impressive, bold, but not reckless." "Thank you," I respond, somewhat surprised by this opening. "We wanted to address the fundamental issues while preserving what works well." She nods slowly. "I spoke with Carol yesterday." This catches my attention. Diana has been careful to keep her conversations with her daughter private, respecting the complexity of the situation while still supporting the changes at Meridian. "She's filed a wrongful termination lawsuit," Diana continues, watching my reaction carefully. "Her attorneys will deliver the paperwork tomorrow." I absorb this news with a calmness that surprises even me. In truth, I had been expecting something like this. Carol isn't someone who accepts defeat gracefully. "I'm sorry to hear that," I say sincerely. "Not just for Meridian, but for your family. This will make reconciliation even more difficult." "Indeed," Diana agrees, a flicker of sadness crossing her features before her composure returns. "I tried to dissuade her, explained that the evidence against her is overwhelming and that prolonging this conflict will only damage her reputation further. But Carol has always been stubborn when she feels wronged." "What does she hope to achieve?" I ask. "The investigation findings are clear. Multiple witnesses have corroborated the evidence." Diana sighs softly. "I believe it's less about winning and more about maintaining the narrative that she's the victim in all this. Some people would rather fight a losing battle than acknowledge their own culpability." She straightens slightly, her gaze direct. "I wanted you to hear about this from me, rather than being blindsided. And to assure you that while I cannot publicly oppose my daughter, I will continue to support the reforms being implemented at Meridian. They're long overdue." After Diana leaves, I sit quietly for a moment, processing this new development. A lawsuit will bring public attention, potential reputational damage, and certainly more stress for everyone involved, especially Mark, who will be further torn between loyalty to his mother and support for his wife. I reach for my phone to call him, then pause, deciding this news would be better delivered in person. Instead, I message George to give him a heads up about the impending legal challenge, then begin making notes about how to communicate this to the executive team and eventually the company at large. By the time I arrive home that evening, I've developed a preliminary response strategy with input from our legal team. Mark is already there, preparing dinner in our kitchen, a routine he's established in recent weeks that seems to provide him comfort amid the ongoing turmoil. "How was the meeting with your grandmother?" I ask, setting my briefcase aside and joining him at the counter. "Enlightening," he replies, handing me a glass of wine. She's more engaged with Meridian's future than I expected. Had some insightful suggestions about the board restructuring. I take a sip, steeling myself for what comes next. Mark, there's something you should know. Your grandmother came to see me this afternoon. He looks up, sensing the shift in my tone. What happened? Your mother is filing a wrongful termination lawsuit against Meridian. The paperwork will be delivered tomorrow. Mark's hands still over the vegetables he's been chopping, his expression freezing momentarily before he sets down the knife. I should have expected this, he says finally, voice tight. It's classic Mom. She can never just let things go. I'm sorry, I say, meaning it deeply. I know this puts you in an even more difficult position. He shakes his head. Don't apologize. You didn't create this situation. He moves to the sink, washing his hands with more force than necessary. Have you told George? Yes, and our legal team. We'll need to prepare a response for when this becomes public. Mark dries his hands, then turns to face me fully. What can I do? How can I help? His immediate offer of support touches me deeply. Despite everything, the strain with his mother, the professional complications, the personal stress, his first instinct is still to stand with me. Just this, I reply softly, moving to embrace him. Just keep being the partner who sees the truth and isn't afraid to acknowledge it. Later that night, as Mark sleeps beside me, I review the day's events in my mind. The product team's excitement about moving forward without unnecessary barriers. The cautious opening with James and Valerie. The challenging but ultimately productive conversation with Thomas Hayes. Diana's warning about Carol's lawsuit. Each interaction represents a different aspect of the transformation happening at Meridian. Some embracing change enthusiastically, others resistant but potentially reachable. Some external stakeholders requiring reassurance, and of course the inevitable backlash from those most invested in the old power structures. My phone lights up with a message from Diane. Heard about the lawsuit. Team is with you. This changes nothing about the path forward. Her simple statement of solidarity reinforces what I've come to realize over these past weeks. The truth, once spoken, has a power that transcends individual attempts to suppress it. Carol's lawsuit may create complications and discomfort, but it cannot undo the fundamental shifts that have already begun at Meridian. I set my phone aside and close my eyes, feeling oddly peaceful despite the challenges ahead. Tomorrow will bring the formal legal notification, the need for careful communication to the company, probably some sensationalized business press coverage. But it will also bring more opportunities to reinforce the new culture we're building. One email, one conversation, one decision at a time. The morning arrives with rain pattering against the windows, matching the somber mood as I prepare for what will certainly be a challenging day. Mark is unusually quiet as we get ready, the impending lawsuit hanging between us like an unwelcome presence. I'm thinking of calling her, he says suddenly as we're about to leave. Mom. Maybe I can talk some sense into her before this goes too far. I consider his suggestion carefully. That's your decision, of course. But be prepared. She's likely to see any contact from you as an opportunity to either recruit you to her side or make you feel guilty for not supporting her. He sighs, knowing I'm right. I just hate the thought of this becoming some public spectacle. The lawsuit, the media coverage, people taking sides. It's exactly what Meridian doesn't need right now. Perhaps that's part of her strategy, I observe gently. To create enough chaos that the board reconsiders their decision, deciding that having her back would be less damaging than prolonged public conflict. Mark's expression hardens slightly. Then she doesn't know the board as well as she thinks. They won't reverse course over something like this. Not after everything that's come to light. We drive to work separately, Mark heading to the technology division he leads, which is located in Meridian's secondary office across town, while I drive to headquarters. The rain intensifies as I navigate the morning traffic, a fitting backdrop for the storm about to break. George is waiting in my office when I arrive, his expression grave. "The papers were delivered to reception 15 minutes ago," he informs, me without preamble. "Our legal team is reviewing them now." "Anything unexpected?" I ask, setting down my bag and turning on my computer. "Actually, yes," he replies, sliding a document across my desk. "Take a look at the specific allegations." I scan the lawsuit quickly, my surprise growing with each paragraph. Carol isn't just claiming wrongful termination, she's alleging a coordinated conspiracy between myself, George, and several board members to remove her through fabricated evidence. The document describes me as a manipulative newcomer who orchestrated a sophisticated deception to advance my own career at her expense. "This is creative," I comment, looking up at George. "She's essentially accusing us of doing exactly what she did." "Classic projection," he agrees, "but it's the last section that concerns me most." I turn to the final pages and feel my stomach tighten. Carol is seeking not just financial damages, but my immediate removal and her full reinstatement as Chief Strategy Officer, with additional oversight powers to prevent further manipulation. "She can't seriously think this will work," I say, though a small flutter of unease rises in my chest. George's expression is grim. "Don't underestimate her. Lisa." Carol built her career on understanding people's vulnerabilities and exploiting them. This lawsuit isn't designed to win in court. It's designed to create enough doubt and disruption that the path of least resistance becomes giving her some version of what she wants. "So what do? We stay the course," he replies firmly. "Continue implementing the changes we've planned. Be transparent with the company about the lawsuit without allowing it to become the center of attention. And most importantly, demonstrate through our actions that Meridian is healthier and more effective without Carol's influence." I nod, appreciating his clarity. "I'll draft a communication to the staff. They should hear about this from us, not through rumors or press coverage." As George leaves, my phone lights up with a message from Mark. "Mom's lawsuit is all over the business news already. Looks like she sent out a press release simultaneous with the legal filing. Call me when you can." A quick internet search confirms his message. Several business publications have already picked up the story, most presenting it as a dramatic power struggle between established leadership and new blood. Carol has clearly been strategic in her media approach, positioning herself as the wronged party, and me as the ambitious usurper. I spend the next hour coordinating with our communications team to craft a measured response, both for internal and external use. We agree on a statement that acknowledges the lawsuit without dignifying its specific allegations, reaffirms the company's confidence in the independent investigation findings, and emphasizes our focus on Meridian's future rather than personal conflicts. By mid-morning, the statement has been sent to all employees and released to the press. I've also spoken briefly with Mark, who reports that his mother is refusing his calls, a clear indication that she's committed to her current course regardless of the family impact. Natalie from HR appears at my door, looking concerned. "People are talking, as you'd expect. There's anxiety about what this means for the company's stability." "That's understandable," I reply. "Let's schedule department check-ins throughout the day. Give everyone a chance to ask questions and express concerns directly rather than letting speculation flourish." As we're discussing logistics for these sessions, Andrew knocks on my door, his expression unusually animated. "You need to see this," he says, entering when I wave him in. He sets his tablet on my desk, displaying an internal messaging channel where dozens of employees are posting supportive messages about the company's direction and leadership. The comments range from simple statements of support to more detailed observations about positive changes noticed since Carol's departure. Faster decision-making, more collaborative meetings, increased transparency around company performance and goals. It started spontaneously about 20 minutes after the announcement about the lawsuit went out, Andrew explains. No prompting from management or HR. Natalie leans over to read some of the messages, her expression lightening. This is not what I expected. Me neither, I admit, genuinely moved by the outpouring of support. I thought we'd need to spend the day managing anxiety and uncertainty. You underestimated how ready people were for change, Andrew suggests. Many of these folks worked under Carol's leadership for years. They know the truth, regardless of what the lawsuit claims. This unexpected show of solidarity strengthens my resolve as I prepare for the afternoon's challenges. A call with nervous investors, a briefing with our expanded legal team, and a strategy session with George and the board chairman to ensure we remain focused on Meridian's transformation despite this new distraction. As I head to the first of these meetings, I pass Carol's former office. The space has remained vacant since her departure, a silent reminder of both what was and what could be. Looking at it now, I make a mental note to discuss repurposing the key area, perhaps as a collaborative workspace where teams can meet across departmental lines, symbolizing the more integrated approach we're fostering. The empty office serves as a fitting metaphor for the situation we find ourselves in. Carol's absence has created space, uncomfortable at first, but increasingly filled with new possibilities and healthier connections. Her lawsuit may represent an attempt to reclaim that space, to reassert control over a narrative that has slipped from her grasp. But looking at the spontaneous support emerging throughout the company, I'm more convinced than ever that Meridian has already begun moving forward without her. Whatever legal battles lie ahead, the company-wide email I sent that fateful morning has indeed changed everything, not just for me or for Carol, but for every person who comes to work at Meridian each day. The truth, once spoken, cannot be unheard. And sometimes that makes all the difference. 2 months after Carol's lawsuit filing, Meridian Solutions has found its new rhythm. The initial media frenzy has subsided into occasional updates as the legal proceedings inch forward. What reporters once framed as a dramatic power struggle has gradually been recontextualized as a necessary corporate governance correction, largely due to our transparent handling of the situation and the company's improved performance under the new leadership structure. I adjust my blazer as I prepare to lead the quarterly all-hands meeting, reviewing my notes one final time. Today marks an important milestone, our first full quarter since the leadership changes, and the numbers tell a compelling story. Project. Deliveries are up 27%, client satisfaction has increased across all metrics, and perhaps most tellingly, employee retention has improved dramatically. The exodus of talent that characterized Carol's final year has not only stopped, but reversed, with several key people who left under her leadership now inquiring about returning. Ready? George asks, appearing at my office door. As I'll ever be, I reply, gathering my materials. It's a good day for Meridian. Together we walk to the main conference center where employees are gathering both in person and virtually. The energy in the room feels different than it did during Carol's tenure. Less tense, more collaborative. People are talking across departmental lines, sharing ideas rather than guarding information as currency in the corporate power game she fostered. As the meeting begins, I take a moment to look around at the faces before me. Some, like Diane and Tanya, have been allies from the beginning. Others, like James and Valerie, have gradually shifted from skepticism to cautious engagement with the new direction. There are new faces, too. Talented professionals drawn by Meridian's evolving reputation as a company committed to both innovation and ethical leadership. Before we dive into the quarterly results, I begin after welcoming everyone. I want to acknowledge something important. The past few months haven't been easy. We've faced public scrutiny, legal challenges, and the complex work of redefining how we operate as an organization. I pause, making eye contact with several team members. That kind of change creates discomfort. It requires each of us to examine our habits, question established patterns, and sometimes develop entirely new ways of working together. That's hard work, and I want to thank every person in this room and those joining remotely for your willingness to engage in that process. This acknowledgement brings nods of recognition throughout the audience. We've all felt the strain of transformation, even those who welcomed it. Now, I continue with a smile, let me show you what that hard work has accomplished. The presentation that follows tells a story not just of numbers, but of renewed purpose. Project teams share their successes, not just meeting deadlines, but exceeding client expectations. Product developers demonstrate innovations that had previously been stalled by bureaucratic bottlenecks. Client-facing teams report strengthened relationships and expanded engagements. When James Peterson, once Carol's staunch ally, steps up to present the financial results, there's a subtle but significant shift in his demeanor. The defensive posture he maintained in our earlier meetings has given way to something approaching enthusiasm as he outlines Meridian's strongest quarter in 3 years. The increased collaboration between departments has eliminated multiple inefficiencies in our operational model, he explains, highlighting several key metrics. We're not just doing more, we're doing it with better resource allocation and reduced overhead. As the presentations conclude and we open the floor for questions, I notice Andrew checking his phone with increasing concern. After the third glance, he discreetly approaches the side of the stage, signaling that he needs to speak with me. What is it? I ask quietly while George fields a question about our expansion plans. Carol just gave an interview on Business Line, Andrew informs me, his voice low. She's making new allegations about document tampering and claiming to have whistleblowers ready to come forward. I maintain my composed expression despite the flutter of concern this news triggers. Is there any substance to it? It seems to be mostly innuendo, he replies. But she specifically mentioned the Hampton Project documentation as being falsified to discredit her decision-making. The Hampton Project, a major healthcare system implementation that had failed spectacularly under Carol's direction after she repeatedly ignored warning signs from the technical team. The documentation I included in my evidence clearly showed her overriding expert recommendations despite escalating problems. We have the original emails and meeting recordings, I remind him calmly. If she's claiming those were tampered with, she's only digging herself deeper. Andrew nods, though he still looks worried. The interview is already getting picked up by other outlets. Our communications team is monitoring the situation. Thank you for letting me know, I say, then turn my attention back to the meeting, just as George directs a question about our technology roadmap to me. I answer smoothly, giving no indication of the new complication that's just emerged. Years of navigating corporate politics, especially during Carol's systematic campaign against me, have taught me the value of composure under pressure. The meeting continues without further interruption, concluding on a high note with a spontaneous round of applause when George announces a company-wide bonus in recognition of the quarter's exceptional results. As people file out of the conference center, several stop to share personal observations or ask follow-up questions. The genuine engagement reflects another shift in our culture, from meetings as performative events to forums for actual communication and problem-solving. Once the last employee has left, George turns to me with a questioning look. What was that about with Andrew? I fill him in on Carol's latest media offensive as we walk back toward the executive offices. Predictable, he sighs when I finish. The lawsuit isn't generating enough attention, so she's escalating with more sensational claims. The timing isn't coincidental, I point out. She waited until our quarterly results were about to be announced. She's trying to undermine our positive momentum. George's expression hardens slightly. She still doesn't get it, does she? This isn't about her versus you anymore. It's about the future of Meridian and the hundreds of people who work here. For Carol, it's always been personal, I reply. That's part of why we're in this situation. She never could separate her ego from the company's best interests. In my office, I find Natalie waiting with the legal team, already preparing our response to Carol's new allegations. The proactive approach is another change from the reactive posture the company often took in the past. We've already issued a brief statement reaffirming the integrity of our evidence and expressing disappointment at these attempts to distract from Meridian's progress, Natalie informs me. We're also reaching out directly to key clients and investors to reassure them. Good, I approve. Transparent and measured, exactly the right approach. Michael from Legal adds, we've also requested an expedited hearing regarding these new claims. If Carol is alleging document tampering, that's a serious accusation with legal implications. We want to address it head-on rather than letting it linger in the press. As the team discusses next steps, my phone buzzes with a message from Mark. Saw Mom's interview. I'm so sorry. This never seems to end. The simple text conveys the weight he's been carrying throughout this ordeal. While I've been focused on Meridian's transformation, Mark has been navigating the painful reality of his mother's increasingly desperate attempts to reclaim her position and reputation, often at the expense of truth and family relationships. I excuse myself to call him, stepping into a quiet corner of my office. Hey, he answers immediately. You okay? I'm fine, I assure him. Just finished the quarterly all hands. The company's doing really well, Mark. Better than we even hoped. Which probably explains Mom's timing, he observes wryly. She can't stand seeing Meridian thrive without her. How are you doing with all this? I ask, more concerned about his well-being than the company's at this moment. He sighs heavily. Grandma Diana came over for lunch. She's not happy with Mom's latest tactics. Says she's damaging not just her own reputation but the Wilson family name. This doesn't surprise me. Diana's support has been unwavering despite her daughter's actions, recognizing that Carol's behavior threatens everything the family has built. She wants to meet with both of us tonight, Mark continues. Says she has a proposal that might help resolve this situation before it gets even messier. Did she give you any details? No, just that she's been thinking about this for weeks and believes she's found a path forward that might work for everyone. I agree to the meeting, curious about what Diana might propose. Her business acumen and strategic thinking remain. Sharp despite her official retirement and her unique position, respected by the board, loved by Carol, and supportive of the changes at Meridian, gives her perspective no one else can offer. After finishing my call with Mark, I returned to the legal discussion, finding the team has already drafted a comprehensive response to Carol's allegations with specific rebuttals backed by our documented evidence. Their efficiency reminds me how much the entire organization has stepped up during this challenging period, with people at all levels demonstrating greater initiative and accountability. The remainder of the afternoon passes in a blur of meetings and decisions, the positive energy from the all hands carrying through despite Carol's attempted disruption. By late afternoon, I receive word that our direct outreach to key stakeholders has been largely successful, with most expressing continued confidence in Meridian's direction and leadership. At 5:30 p.m., I head home to prepare for the evening meeting with Diana. Mark is already there when I arrive, setting the dining room table with the good china, a sign he's taking this discussion seriously. Grandma Diana specifically requested a proper dinner setting, he explains with a small smile. Said important conversations shouldn't happen around takeout containers. A woman after my own heart, Diana comments, appearing in the doorway with impeccable timing. Despite the serious circumstances, she looks elegant as always, her silver hair perfectly styled, her posture straight and dignified even at 75. Mark greets her with a warm hug, which she returns before turning to me with an appraising look. You're holding up well, she observes. The company too, from what I hear. Impressive quarterly results. Thank you, I reply, accepting the small nod that serves as her version of a hug. We have good people who've risen to the occasion. Over dinner, Diana keeps the conversation light, inquiring about various Meridian projects and sharing anecdotes from her own executive days. It's only after we've moved to the living room with coffee that she finally addresses the purpose of her visit. Carol's latest interview was a mistake, she begins bluntly. Accusing you of document tampering without evidence is legally precarious and strategically short-sighted. It's time to end this destructive spiral before she does irreparable damage to herself and the Wilson legacy. We'd love nothing more, I respond carefully. But Carol doesn't seem interested in resolution unless it involves her complete reinstatement. Diana sets down her coffee cup with precision. Which we all know isn't possible. The board won't reverse their decision, especially now that Meridian is performing so well under the new structure. Have you told her that? Mark asks quietly. Repeatedly, his grandmother confirms. But Carol has convinced herself that this is a temporary setback, that if she fights hard enough, creates enough pressure, eventually everyone will capitulate, just to make the problem go away. So what do you propose? I ask, curious about Diana's solution to this seemingly intractable standoff. She straightens slightly, her expression resolute. I'm prepared to offer Carol a choice. Either she drops the lawsuit and accepts a generous severance package, with the understanding that she'll make no further public statements about Meridian, or I will publicly support the company's position. The significance of this ultimatum isn't lost on either of us. Diana has thus far maintained a careful neutrality in public, despite her private support for the changes at Meridian. A public statement from her endorsing the company's actions against her own daughter would be devastating to Carol's case, both legally and in terms of public perception. That's substantial, Mark comments, his expression conflicted. You think it will work? Carol values two things above all else: her reputation and her relationship with me, Diana states matter-of-factly. She can salvage one or risk losing both. I believe she'll make the rational choice when presented so starkly. What would this severance package include? I ask, thinking practically. Financial compensation equivalent to 2 years' salary, continued health benefits, and, this is important, a carefully worded statement from Meridian acknowledging her historical contributions to the company's growth, Diana outlines. She needs a face-saving exit that allows her to move forward professionally. I consider this proposal carefully. The financial terms are generous, but not unreasonable given the cost of prolonged litigation. The acknowledgement of Carol's past contributions is something I can support genuinely. Despite her recent actions, she did help build Meridian into the company it became before her leadership style began holding it back. The board would need to approve the financial terms, I note, but I think they'd be receptive, especially if it brings this situation to a definitive close. And you, Mark? Diana turns to her grandson. This affects your family directly. What do you think? Mark takes a moment before responding, weighing his words carefully. I think it's the best chance we have to end this without further damage. To everyone involved, Mom needs to move on for her own sake as much as Meridian's. Then I'll speak with her tomorrow, Diana decides. It's time to close this unfortunate chapter. After Diana leaves, Mark and I sit in silence for a while, processing the potential impact of her intervention. There's hope in the possibility of resolution, but also acknowledgement of the painful realities that have brought us to this point. Do you think she'll accept? I ask eventually. Mark considers this, absently turning his wedding ring, a nervous habit he's developed during these difficult months. If it were just the company pressure, probably not. But Grandma Diana is different. Mom has always sought her approval, even while resenting her influence. If anyone can get through to her, it's Diana. The next morning, I arrive at Meridian, early, wanting to brief George about Diana's proposal before the day's meetings begin. He listens thoughtfully as I outline the potential resolution. It's a reasonable approach, he agrees when I finish. and having Diana's involvement could make the difference. Carol might not listen to us, but she'll listen to her mother. If it works, how soon could we implement the agreement? I ask. I can convene a special board session tomorrow to approve the financial terms, George replies. The legal team could have documents ready by the end of the week. We could potentially have this resolved within 10 days if Carol agrees. The possibility of such a swift conclusion to the conflict that has consumed so much of our energy over the past months is both appealing and slightly disorienting. Despite the challenges, the situation with Carol has in many ways catalyzed Meridian's transformation, giving us a clear imperative for change and a common purpose in building something better. What happens next? I ask, thinking beyond the immediate resolution. For Meridian, I mean. George leans back in his chair, considering the question. We continue the work we've already begun, implementing the new governance structures, fostering the collaborative culture that's emerging, executing our growth strategy with the renewed focus we've established. He smiles slightly. But we do it without the constant distraction of litigation and public relations challenges. We do it looking forward rather than continually having to address the past. The day progresses with its usual rhythm of meetings and decisions, though there's an undercurrent of anticipation as we wait to hear the outcome of Diana's conversation with Carol. By mid-afternoon, the waiting becomes difficult to bear, and I find myself checking my phone more frequently than usual. Around 4:30 p.m., Mark calls. Grandma Diana just left Mom's house, he reports without preamble. The meeting lasted over 3 hours. And? I prompt when he doesn't immediately continue. It was complicated, he says carefully. Mom initially rejected the proposal outright, apparently through quite a scene, but Grandma held firm. Made it clear this wasn't a negotiation, but a final offer with consequences if declined. So what happened? I press, feeling George's attentive gaze from across my office where he's been waiting with me for news. Mom asked for 24 hours to consider her options and consult with her attorneys, Mark explains. Grandma agreed but made it clear the timeline wasn't flexible. Decision by this time tomorrow, or she moves forward with her public statement supporting Meridian. I relay this update to George, who receives it with measured optimism. It's progress that she's considering it at all, he observes. Diana must have made quite an impression. That evening, Mark and I discuss potential outcomes over dinner, trying to prepare ourselves for either resolution or escalation. The weight of uncertainty feels heavier now that a potential end is in sight but not guaranteed. Whatever happens with Mom's decision, Mark says as we clear the dishes, I want you to know I'm proud of how you've handled this entire situation. You've been strong without being vindictive, principled without being rigid. You've focused on building rather than destroying. His words catch me by surprise, bringing unexpected emotion to the surface. In the midst of managing the company response, supporting the organizational transformation, and navigating the legal complexities, I've had little time to reflect on the personal impact of these past months. Thank you, I reply simply, touched by his recognition. The next day passes with excruciating slowness as we await Carol's decision. The 4:30 p.m. deadline approaches with no word from Diana, increasing the tension with each passing minute. At 4:25, my phone finally rings, not Mark or Diana, but Carol herself. For a moment, I consider not answering, wary of what new tactic she might employ. But curiosity and the hope for resolution win out. Hello, Carol, I answer, keeping my voice neutral. Lisa. Her tone is clipped but controlled, quite different from the emotional volatility she's displayed since her removal. I'm calling to inform you that I've instructed my attorneys to contact Meridian's legal team regarding settlement terms. The indirect phrasing is typically Carol, unable to state directly that she's accepting the proposal, framing it instead as her own decision to pursue settlement. I see, I respond carefully. That seems like a positive step, toward resolution. Let's be clear, she continues, her voice hardening slightly. I still believe I was wrongfully terminated, but I recognize that prolonging this conflict serves no one's interests, particularly the company's. The mention of the company's interests, rather than just her own, represents a subtle but significant shift in her perspective. Perhaps Diana's intervention has had a deeper impact than I anticipated. I appreciate your willingness to move toward resolution, I say, maintaining my measured tone. Our legal team will be responsive to your attorney's contact. There's a pause before Carol speaks again, her voice lower and less certain than before. How is Mark? The question catches me off guard, a reminder that beneath the corporate conflict and power struggles, there are personal relationships permanently altered by what's transpired. He's doing as well as can be expected, I answer honestly. This has been difficult for him. Another pause, longer this time. Tell him, she begins, then stops. No, never mind. We'll be in touch through the attorneys. The call ends abruptly, leaving me with mixed emotions. While Carol's agreement to settlement is a significant positive development, her brief moment of personal vulnerability serves as a reminder of the human cost of this conflict. The family bonds strained, the relationships damaged in ways that may never fully heal. I immediately called George to share the news, then Mark, who receives it with a complex mixture of relief and sadness. The resolution brings closure to the professional dimension of the conflict, but leaves much unresolved in the personal realm, something that will require its own healing process over time. The next week passes in a flurry of legal discussions and document preparations. Carol's attorneys prove surprisingly cooperative now that she's committed to settlement, working constructively with our legal team to finalize the terms. The board unanimously approves the financial package, recognizing the value of definitive resolution over continued uncertainty. By Friday afternoon, we have signed agreements in hand. Carol has dropped her lawsuit in exchange for the negotiated severance package and Meridian statement acknowledging her historical contributions. Most critically, she has agreed to make no further public statements about the company or its leadership. The news spreads quickly throughout Meridian, generating reactions that range from relief to cautious optimism. For many employees, especially those who suffered under Carol's leadership style, the settlement represents not just the end of a public conflict, but validation of the changes we've implemented. It feels like we can finally move forward without looking over our shoulders, Diane comments during our leadership team meeting that afternoon, like the last shadow has been lifted. I wouldn't go that far, James cautions, his transition from Carol's ally to constructive participant in the new structure still evolving. There will be lingering effects for some time. Trust takes longer to rebuild than organizational charts. True, I acknowledge, but now we can focus fully on that rebuilding without the distraction of legal battles and media speculation. As the meeting concludes and team members file out, George remains behind, his expression thoughtful. You know, when you sent that company-wide email 3 months ago, I don't think any of us could have predicted where we'd end up. I smile slightly at the understatement. It was certainly a leap into the unknown. A necessary one, he adds firmly. Carol's methods were undermining everything this company stands for, driving away talent and creating a culture of fear rather than innovation. Someone needed to speak the truth. And now, I ask, curious about his perspective on where we stand. Now we have the opportunity to really transform Meridian, he replies with genuine enthusiasm. Not just fix what was broken, but build something better than it's ever been. That evening, as I drive home along the shore of Lake Harriet, I reflect on the journey that began with a single email, a moment of truth-telling that changed not just my professional trajectory, but Meridian's future. The setting sun casts long shadows across the water, reminding me of Diana's words from months ago. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who needs to speak the loudest when it matters most. I arrive home to find Mark sitting on our porch, watching the last light fade from the sky. He looks peaceful for the first time in months, the strain of divided loyalties temporarily eased by the settlement. "Diana called," he says as I join him. "She's proud of how this resolved. Says it took courage from everyone involved to find a path forward." "Even Carol?" I ask, curious about his grandmother's perspective. "Especially Carol," he confirms. "Grandma said it took a different kind of courage for Mom to finally accept reality and let go of something she's defined herself by for so long." We sit in comfortable silence for a while, watching darkness settle over the lake. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, the ongoing work of rebuilding Meridian's culture, developing our strategic direction, nurturing the collaborative spirit that's emerged from this difficult period. But tonight, there's space to simply appreciate the resolution that seemed so unlikely just months ago. "Your email really did change everything," Mark observes quietly, echoing George's earlier comment. "Not the email itself," I correct gently. "The truth it contained. That's what made the difference." As stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, I consider how a single act of speaking truth, even when difficult, even when dangerous, can set in motion changes that extend far beyond what we initially imagine. Meridian is transforming not just because Carol's harmful leadership was removed, but because that removal created space for something healthier to grow in its place. The company-wide email I sent that morning didn't just change my circumstances or Carol's. It changed the fundamental dynamics of an entire organization, inviting everyone within it to reimagine what Meridian could become when built on transparency and respect, rather than manipulation and fear. That transformation continues to unfold, one conversation, one decision, one day at a time. A reminder that speaking truth, however uncomfortable, can be the catalyst for positive change that affects hundreds of lives. Sometimes that makes all the difference. 1 year after the email that changed everything at Meridian Solutions, I stand at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Minneapolis Convention Center, accepting the Women in Business Leadership Award. The audience of industry professionals and executives applauds warmly as I step forward, the spotlight momentarily blinding. "Thank you," I begin, adjusting the microphone. This recognition means a great deal to me, not just personally, but because it represents the transformation that's possible when we create workplaces built on integrity and transparency. From my vantage point, I can see the Meridian table, George beaming with obvious pride, Diane and Tanya exchanging pleased glances, and Mark watching with that quiet, supportive presence that has been my anchor through everything. Even James and Valerie, once Carol's staunchest allies, are here tonight, their gradual shift from reluctant participants to engaged contributors now complete. A year ago, Meridian Solutions was at a crossroads, I continue. We faced a choice between preserving comfortable falsehoods or embracing uncomfortable truths, between allowing toxic leadership to continue or taking the risk of speaking up. The room quiets, executives from across the region leaning forward slightly. Many know parts of our story. It made headlines for weeks, but few understand the full journey. I sent an email, I say simply. One email, addressing years of manipulation and misinformation. It wasn't an easy decision. It carried significant professional and personal risks. But sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply tell the truth, even when, especially when, powerful forces are invested in keeping that truth hidden. I pause, letting the words settle. What followed wasn't always pretty. There were difficult confrontations, legal challenges, strained relationships. But there was also something remarkable. A company finding its authentic voice. Employees at every level stepping forward with ideas that had been suppressed for years. Clients experiencing partnerships based on genuine value rather than political maneuvering. The statistics that follow tell the story in concrete terms. Meridian's 42% growth over the past year, our industry-leading employee retention rate, the innovative healthcare solutions we've launched that are now being implemented in hospital systems nationwide. But it's the less quantifiable changes that matter most to me. The cultural shift from fear to collaboration, from information hoarding to knowledge sharing. Leadership isn't about having all the answers, I conclude, making eye contact with young professionals scattered throughout the audience. It's about creating environments where truth can be spoken without fear, where challenges can be addressed openly rather than hidden, where everyone's contributions are valued based on merit rather than political allegiance. As I return to my seat amid renewed applause, Mark squeezes my hand gently. "Perfect," he whispers. The remainder of the evening passes in a pleasant blur of congratulations and conversations. Industry peers who once kept Meridian at arm's length now seek partnerships. Potential recruits approach with enthusiastic questions about our work environment. Former employees who left during Carol's tenure inquire about returning. It's nearly midnight when we finally leave the convention center, the cool Minnesota night air refreshing after hours in the crowded ballroom. George and Diana join us briefly on the steps outside, both looking pleased with the evening's recognition. "You've accomplished something remarkable," Diana observes, her elegant posture undiminished at 76. "Not just turning Meridian around financially, but fundamentally changing its character." "We all did it," I correct gently. "It took everyone choosing a different path forward." "But it started with you," George reminds me. "With that email, most people would have been too cautious to send." As they depart for their respective homes, Mark and I walk slowly toward our car, enjoying the rare moment of quiet reflection. The past year has been incredibly demanding. Rebuilding Meridian while navigating the aftermath of Carol's departure has consumed most of our waking hours. "Have you heard from your mother recently?" I ask carefully. We rarely discuss Carol, but tonight, a milestone of sorts, seems appropriate for checking in. Mark nods. "Last week. She's consulting for a firm in Boston now. Sounds like she's doing well, all things considered." "That's good," I say sincerely. Despite everything that happened, I never wished for Carol's destruction, only for the end of her harmful influence at Meridian. "She mentioned seeing the announcement about your award in the business journal," Mark adds, surprising me. "Said it was well-deserved." This unexpected acknowledgement catches me off guard. "Really? That doesn't sound like Carol." He shrugs slightly. "People can change, or at least they can gain perspective with time and distance." The next morning, I arrive at Meridian headquarters early, wanting some quiet time before the day's meetings begin. The office feels different now, brighter somehow, with glass walls where once there were solid barriers, collaborative spaces where previously there were isolated offices. The physical redesign we implemented 6 months ago serves as a tangible representation of the company's philosophical transformation. Andrew greets me as I pass the executive support area, no longer a separate assistant, but part of an integrated team that works across leadership functions. The Ethics and Governance Committee he joined during our restructuring has become a respected voice in the organization, recently presenting its recommendations to the board to enthusiastic reception. "Congratulations on the award," he says warmly. The entire support team was thrilled. They've put the picture from the business journal up in the break room. "That's very kind," I reply. "Though this recognition belongs to everyone who helped rebuild Meridian." In my office, I find a small plant on my desk with a card signed by the product development team. A simple gesture of appreciation that would have been unthinkable in the previous culture where such expressions could be politically risky if directed toward the wrong person. As I settle in to review the day's priorities, I reflect on how thoroughly things have changed. The territorial battles that once consumed so much energy have given way to cross-functional collaboration. The information bottlenecks Carol created, have been replaced by transparent communication channels. Even the board operates differently now, with clearer oversight mechanisms and more diverse voices contributing to strategic decisions. My calendar notification chimes, reminding me of today's all-hands meeting, a quarterly tradition I established to ensure everyone at Meridian remains connected to our overall direction and progress. Unlike the tightly controlled presentations of the past, these sessions now include updates from every department and an open forum where employees can ask questions directly of the leadership team. As I gather my materials, Diane appears at my door. Ready for the big announcement today? I nod, feeling a mixture of excitement and appropriate gravity. As ready as we can be. The acquisition team has done incredible work preparing for this. Today we'll be announcing Meridian's acquisition of Westfield Health Technologies, a strategic move that will significantly expand our market presence and technical capabilities. It's our first major acquisition since the leadership change, representing not just business growth but validation of our new direction. The board unanimously approved the deal last week, impressed by the thorough due diligence and clear strategic alignment our team demonstrated. It's quite a milestone, Diane comments as we walk together toward the conference center. A year ago, we were fighting for the company's survival. Now we're leading industry consolidation. It's been quite a journey, I agree. The conference center fills quickly, employees gathering with an energy that reflects Meridian's renewed vitality. When I take the stage to begin the meeting, I'm struck again by the visible difference in how people engage with each other, the open communication, the attentive listening, the absence of the wary calculation that once characterized company gatherings. Good morning, everyone. I begin, surveying the room with genuine appreciation. Before we get to today's main announcement, I want to take a moment to reflect on where we are as a company. I pause, finding the right words for this significant moment. 1 year ago, Meridian was at a critical juncture. We faced challenges not just in our market position, but in our fundamental identity as an organization. The path forward wasn't clear, and the risks of change seemed overwhelming. Heads nod throughout the audience, particularly among those who lived through the difficult transition. Today, we stand in a very different place. Our financial results have exceeded projections for 3 consecutive quarters. Our client satisfaction metrics are at historic highs. Our employee engagement scores have improved by 64%. I smile at the spontaneous applause this statistic generates. But most importantly, we've redefined who we are and how we work together. I gesture to the diverse team seated in the front row, the acquisition leaders who will present the details of the Westfield deal. The announcement we're about to share represents not just a business transaction, but a validation of everything we've built together. It wouldn't have been possible without the foundation of trust, transparency, and collaboration that each of you has helped create. As I introduce the acquisition team and take my seat, I catch George's eye across the room. His slight nod carries a wealth of meaning, acknowledgement of how far we've come, pride in what we've built, confidence in where we're headed. The presentation unfolds with impressive clarity, each team member explaining different aspects of the acquisition and its implications for Meridian's future. The questions that follow are thoughtful and substantive, reflecting an organization where people feel genuinely invested in understanding strategy, rather than simply following directions. When the meeting concludes, employees linger to discuss the announcement, their conversations animated and forward-looking. The atmosphere is one of collective purpose, exactly what we've worked so hard to foster over the past year. Back in my office later that afternoon, I find a moment of quiet to absorb the significance of the day. On my desk sits a framed copy of the company-wide email I sent 1 year ago, a gift from Mark on the 6-month anniversary of the changes it initiated. Reading those words now feels like looking through a window to a different life, the controlled fury beneath my measured language, the calculated risk of speaking truth to power, the uncertainty about what would follow. I couldn't have predicted then exactly how things would unfold. Carol's resistance, Diana's intervention, the lawsuit and eventual settlement, the company's remarkable resurgence. But I knew with absolute certainty that remaining silent was no longer an option, regardless of the personal and professional cost of speaking up. My phone buzzes with a message from Mark. "Dinner tonight to celebrate? Grandma Diana wants to join us." I smile, typing back a quick acceptance. Diana has become an unexpected ally and friend throughout this journey, her wisdom and support extending far beyond her initial intervention with Carol. Her perspective as a woman who navigated male-dominated business environments decades before me has provided valuable context for my own leadership challenges. As the workday concludes, I take one final look around my office, at the awards Meridian has received for innovation and workplace culture, at the photo of our leadership team taken at the recent strategic retreat, at the handwritten notes from employees expressing appreciation for specific changes we've implemented. The company-wide email I sent that day was just the beginning, a necessary first step in a much longer journey of transformation. But it was the catalyst that made everything else possible. The moment when silence gave way to truth, when fear gave way to courage, when acceptance of the status quo gave way to the possibility of something better. Walking through the office. Toward the exit, I pass Carol's former space, now transformed into a collaborative innovation lab where cross-functional teams develop new healthcare solutions. The symbolism isn't lost on me. What was once a closed room where power was hoarded has become an open space where ideas flourish. Outside, the Minneapolis sunset paints the sky in vibrant oranges and purples, a fitting backdrop for a day of celebration and reflection. As I head home to meet Mark and Diana, I carry with me the quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes a single act of courage, a decision to speak truth despite the risks, can truly change everything. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.